Hey guys, so in the third part of the series, we are now going to do the Rogue. If you guys like Diablo content, or if you guys like to see me do like actual deep builds or maybe lore videos, please like or subscribe down below, and also leave a comment as to what you guys would like to see. This means a lot to me. Thank you guys for watching. Let's just dive right into the Rogue. Alright guys, so first we're going to start off with the resource building of the Rogue, and this is going to be the first area, first of 5 abilities, and then from there on we're going to keep going down the tree. So the first ability is going to be Invigorating Strike, melee attack an enemy, dealing 23% damage and increasing energy regeneration by 20% for 3 seconds. The first passive of that is going to be damaging a crowd-controlled or injured enemy with Invigorated Strike, increases its energy regeneration bonus by 30%. So I wonder if that means it increases by 50% overall. But anyway, we're moving on to the first split is Invigorating Strike. Additionally, grants 3% lucky chance hitting a crowd-controlled injured enemy, increases this bonus by 16%. So then next is going to be hitting an enemy with Invigorating Strike while you are below 50% energy makes them vulnerable for 3 seconds. Next ability is going to be Blade Shift. Quickly stab your enemy for 15% damage and shift, allowing you to move freely through enemies for 3 seconds. First, a passive of that is damaging an enemy with Blade Shift grants 5% movement speed while Blade Shift is active, up to 20%. Next is going to be while Blade Shift is active, you gain 15% to all non-physical resistance and reduce the duration of incoming crowd control impaired effects by 20%. Next, passive for that is move through enemies while Blade Shift is active, refreshing its duration. After moving through enemies 5 times, your next Blade Shift will daze enemies for 2 seconds. That's pretty good. Next ability is Puncture. While throw blades a short distance, dealing 21% damage. Every third cast slows enemies for 20% for 2 seconds. Critical strikes will always slow. First passive is gain 2 energy when Puncture damages a crowd-controlled enemy. First split passive is every third cast of Puncture will also ricochet up to 2 times. Critical strikes will always ricochet. Next split is Puncture now throws 3 blades in a spread, each dealing 35% of its damage of its base damage. Hitting an enemy with at least 2 blades at once makes them vulnerable for 2 seconds. Next ability is Heart Seeker. Fire an arrow that seeks an enemy, dealing 22% damage, increasing your critical strike against them by 3% for 4 seconds, up to 15%. And then first the passive is when Heartseeker critically strikes, gain 8% attack speed for 4 seconds, double this amount if enemy is vulnerable. Next split, or first split I should say, Heartseeker is also increases the critical strike damage the enemy takes from you by 5% for 4 seconds, up to 25%. That's really good. There's a lot of increased critical strike here. Next split is Heartseeker ricochets to an additional enemy, dealing 30% of the original damage. So I wonder if that means if you crit on the original damage, if the next hit will 30% off that crit damage, which that is actually really good. Okay, moving on. Forceful arrow. Fire a powerful arrow at an enemy, dealing 20% damage. Every third cast makes the enemy vulnerable for 2 seconds. Next our first passive for that ability is every third cast of Forceful Arrow additionally has 50% increased critical strike chance. First split is Forceful Arrow pierces through vulnerable enemies. Second split is Forceful Arrow knocks back non-elite enemies. If they are close, if they collide with another enemy, both are knocked down for 1.5 seconds. Alright, moving on to your core ability. It's going to be your right click or passives, but we're going to start off with abilities. So first ability is Barrage. Unleash a barrage of 5 arrows that expand outwards, each dealing 21% damage. Each arrow has 20% chance to ricochet off an enemy up to 1 time. Ricochet deals 40% of the arrow's base damage. And then if you have combo points there, the combo points will increase damage and arrows probably. So moving on to the first passive is Barrage's ricochet chance is increased by 100% for arrows that damage a vulnerable enemy or critical strike an enemy. Next, first passive that is split. Every third cast of Barrage makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. And then the next split is whenever a cast of Barrage ricochets at least 4 times, your next cast gains 20% critical strike chance. That's pretty good because if you go with a critical strike, they're always ricochet, and then this is increasing your critical strike. It's just, you can see a good little like critical strike combo going on here. So next ability, Twisting Blades. Impale an enemy with your blades, dealing 57% damage and making them take times 8% increased damage while impaired. After 1.5 seconds, the blade returns to you, piercing enemies for 72% damage. Then you got the combo point system there that does obviously increased damage and bonus damage. And then you got the first passive for that is Twisting Blades deals 30% increased damage when returned. So does that do like 100% damage then? 102% damage? Alright, then we got enemies are dazed while impaled by Twisting Blades. And then next passive is when your Twisting Blades return, your active cooldowns are reduced by 1 second per enemy they pass through, up to 3 seconds. Next ability is Flurry. Unleash a flurry of stabs and slashes, striking enemies in front of you 4 times of dealing the total of 60% damage each. Next passive is... Our first passive for that is each time Flurry damages a crowd-controlled or vulnerable enemy, you are healed by 1% of your maximum health, up to 12% maximum life per cast. First split is evade through an enemy will cause your next Flurry to stun enemies for 2.5 seconds. Next passive is if Flurry hits any vulnerable enemy, it will make all enemies hit by that cast vulnerable for 3 seconds. Next ability is Penetrating Shot. Fire an arrow that pierces through enemies in a line, dealing 70% damage. Then we got the first passive for that is Penetrating Shot deals times 20% increased damage per enemy it pierces. Ooh. Then we got the first split is when cast with full energy. Penetrating Shot will slow all enemies it hits by 50% for 3 seconds. Elite enemies will also be knocked down for 1.5 seconds. Next split is if Penetrating Shot damages at least 3 enemies, your next Penetrating Shot has plus 20% increased critical strike chance. Alright, now we're going to go for the passives. The first passive is Stutter Step. Critically striking an enemy grants 5% movement speed for 4 seconds. Next passive is you gain 4% close damage reduction. And then we got the next passive off of that, which is Siphoning Strikes. Heal for 1% of your maximum life when you critically strike close enemies. Alright, moving on to the next set of abilities and passives. We got this one right here, which starts with Shadow Step. Become unstoppable and quickly move through the shadows to stab your victim from behind for 72% damage. Gain 50% increased movement speed for 2 seconds afterwards. First passive for that is going to be damaging an enemy with Shadow Step. Increases your critical strike chance against them for 8% for 3 seconds. Next passive split for that is enemies damaged by Shadow Step are stunned for 2 seconds. Then we got Shadow Step's cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds. Cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds when it damages an enemy you haven't hit with Shadow Step in the last 4 seconds. Next ability is Call Traps. Leap backwards, throw Call Traps on the ground, dealing 30% damage and slowing enemies by 50%. Last 6 seconds. First passive for that is enemies take times 3% increased damage for each second they are in the Call Traps. Next ability, or next passive for that is Call Traps now deal cold damage and chill enemies for 20% per second. Next one is Disciplined Call Trap. You have 5% critical strike chance against enemies inside your Call Traps. Double this amount against vulnerable enemies. Then we got the next ability, which is Dash. Dash forward and slash enemies for 37% damage. Next passive is enemies damaged by Dash take 20% increased critical strike damage for 5 seconds. Next split is dealing damage to crowd-controlled enemies with Dash reduces its charge cooldown by 0.5 seconds up to 3 seconds per cast. Next split is Dash slows enemies it hits by 30% for 3 seconds. Any enemy already slowed will be dazed for 2 seconds instead. Alright, then we move on to the passives total. So passives, we got Weapon Mastery. Gain bonus when attacking based on a weapon type. Daggers is times 5% increased damage to healthy enemies. Swords is 3% increased damage. Bows is 4% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. And crossbows is 5% increased critical strike damage. Interesting. Then we got Rugged. Gain 5% damage reduction against damage over time effects. And then we got reactive defense. Gain 4.5% damage reduction while inflicted by control impairing effects. Control impairing effects. Interesting. All right, first, next passive in this three-way split is Rapid Gambits. Your evade cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds when you daze an enemy. And then we got, after knocking back or knocking down an enemy, you gain 5% increased critical strike chance against them for 3 seconds. Then they both go into trick attacks. When you critically strike a dazed enemy, they are knocked down for 0.5 seconds. Huh. I wonder how that 0.5 seconds would look. Because, like, I mean, maybe if you increase this, it goes up to 1.5 seconds. But it's just weird that it starts off with that. Alright, first set of abilities, then passive. So first, starting with abilities, is Dark Shroud. Surround yourself with up to 5 protective shadows. Gain 8% damage reduction per active shadow. Each time you take direct damage, the damage is reduced and a shadow is consumed. And then we go off to passive for that. Dark Shroud's shadows have a 10% chance to not be consumed. That's pretty good. And then we're going off to a first split, which is while you have at least 2 active shadows from Dark Shroud, you gain 10% increased critical strike chance. Then the next split is each active shadow from Dark Shroud grants you 3% increased movement speed. Going off to the next ability then is Poison Trap. Place a trap that arms. After 1.25 seconds, it activates when an enemy moves into range, applying 344%? 344% bonus damage, poison damage over 9 seconds to the enemies in the area. You can have 4 armed traps out at once. First passive for that is Poison Trap knocks down enemies for 1.5 seconds when it activates. Next passive is you deal 10% increased poison damage to enemies standing inside your Poison Trap. And then we got Poison Trap has a 20% chance to reset your Imbuement skill cooldowns when activated. Nice. Next ability is Smoke Grenade. Throw a smoky concoction at enemies that dazes them for 4 seconds. And then we got enemies affected by Smoke Grenade take 15% increased damage from you. And then the next split, or the first split, is if an enemy is vulnerable, slowed, or chilled, when Smoke Grenade will daze them for 20% longer. And then we got Lucky Hit. Dealing direct damage to enemies affected by Smoke Grenade has up to a 25% chance to reduce its cooldown by 1 second or by 2 seconds instead if the enemy is vulnerable. And then we got the next ability, which is Concealment. Vanish from sight, gaining an advanced form of stealth for 4 seconds that will not be removed by taking damage. Concealment also makes you unstoppable, grants you 25% movement speed, and allows you to move freely through enemies for its duration. Using an attack skill during concealment will break concealment. Next, our first passive for this is you gain 40 energy when you enter concealment. Then the next passive for the first of the split is the skill that breaks concealment makes enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. And then the next one is the skill that breaks concealment will always be guaranteed critical strike. That's really good. Alright, now going up for passives. We got Agile. Using a cooldown increases your dodge chance by 3%. And then moving on to that is while stealthed, you heal for 1% maximum life per second. These could be really good together. Just kind of like using this as a oh crap, and then you're healing while you're kind of oh crap. And then if you go into like the critical strike, after you get a certain amount of healing, you go into, you do 100% guaranteed critical strike. That's really good. Moving on to the next passive here, you deal 6% increased damage to healthy and injured enemies. So what that means is there's a little percentage in the middle that you're not going to deal bonus increased damage to. So injured is anything below 30%, I believe, and while healthy is anything above 80%. So that 30 to 80% window, this isn't going to help increase that damage to that part of their life. But while like at the beginning of their life and towards the end of their life, you're going to have increased damage. So this can be really good. But like I said, if you're going to go against like world bosses or anything like that, that middle section, you're not getting any benefits of this towards that. All right, next is Malice. You deal 3% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. So you got a lot of increasing damage here. All right, next is in your imbuements. First, we're going to go abilities, then we're going to go passives. So first ability is going to be Shadow Imbuement. Imbue your enemies. Imbue your weapons. Holy crap. Imbue your weapons with Festering Shadows. Your next 2 imbuement skills deal shadow damage and infect enemies for 6 seconds. Infected enemies explode on death, dealing 40% damage to all surrounding enemies. If the infection expires before the enemy dies, it will deal 40% damage to only that enemy. That's still good. I mean, it's still, you know, you don't have so much of a let me hurry up and kill them while they're infected, you know, because that damage will still deal damage only to that one target, though, instead of like an area effect. Alright, so first passive for that is you have a 25% increased critical strike chance against injured enemies infected by Shadow Imbuement. Then first split for that is Shadow Imbuement's primary explosion makes enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. And then we got enemies damaged by Shadow Imbuement skills take 12% increased non-physical damage from you for 8 seconds. Next ability is Poison Imbuement. Imbue your weapons with lethal poison. Your next 2 imbuement skills deal poison damage and apply 70% base damage as an additional poison damage over 5 seconds. First passive for this is Poison Imbuement. Poisoning duration is increased by 1 second. And then we got critical strikes with Poison Imbuement skills deal 30% increased poison damage. And then Lucky Hit Poison Imbuement skills have up to 30% chance to apply double the amount of poison over time. That's really good. Next skill is Cold Imbuement. Imbue your weapons with frigid energies. Your next 2 imbuement skills deal cold damage and chill enemies for 25% per hit. Your first passive for this is Lucky Hit. Cold Imbuement skills have a 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. Then we got our first split is Cold Imbuement skills deal 20% damage to crowd-controlled enemies. Double this bonus against frozen enemies. And then we got Lucky Hit, critical strike chance. Critical strikes with Cold Imbuement skills have up to 20% chance to instantly freeze enemies for 3 seconds. Now going into passives, we're going to start over here. Precision Imbuement. Imbue skills gain 5% increased critical strike chance. Next passive is Shadow has up to 10% chance to stun for 0.5 seconds. And then we're going into that. So I'm guessing because it has 3 there, I'm guessing this goes up to 1.5 seconds. But then we're going to go up to here, which each time you kill an enemy with shadow damage, you generate 10 energy. The next passive is Deadly Venom. You deal 3% increased poisoning damage. And then we split into debilitating toxins. Poisoned enemies deal 5% less damage. And then this one here, you gain 1% increased attack speed for each enemy you've poisoned up to 15%. And then we go down here, which is Frigid Finesse. You deal 5% increased damage to chilled enemies. This bonus increases to 10% against frozen enemies. And then we got Chilling Weights. Chilled enemies have their movement speed further reduced up to 10%. Alright, now going to the ultimates. We're going to start with abilities, then we're going to go to passives. So first ability is Shadow Clone. Your shadow mimics your actions for 15% for 15 seconds. The shadow deals 60% of your damage. Then the first passive for that is you are unstoppable for 5 seconds after casting Shadow Clone. That's pretty good. And then we go into your Shadow Clone deals additional 20% of your damage. So what should I say? 60. So that would be 80% of your damage. That's really good. Then moving on to the next ability is Death Trap. Place a trap that arms after 1.25 seconds. It activates when an enemy moves into range, dealing a total of 250% damage to each enemy in the area. First passive for that is enemies are pulled into the Death Trap when it activates. Next passive for that is if Death Trap kills an enemy, its cooldown is reduced by 10 seconds. Oh, what is does it have cooldown on here? Nice. So you kill 4 enemies and you pretty much got your Death Trap back right away. Alright, next ability is Rain of Arrows. Arrows rain down over a large area for 2 seconds, each wave dealing 100% damage. Next, first passive for that is Imbuement Skills. Effects applied by Rain of Arrows have a 20% increased potency. And then we got Rain of Arrows. Second wave knocks down enemies for 3 seconds. So basically just increasing that second wave that goes through. So no, first with the pass. So now with passives, we got Trap Mastery. When Poison Trap or Death Trap activates, you gain 4% increased critical strike chance against vulnerable enemies and crowd-controlled enemies for 4 seconds. Next passive is Aftermath. After using an ultimate skill, restore 25 energy. So I wonder if this is really good together. So going up here, Innervation, up to 10% chance to gain 8 energy. And then non-physical damage you deal has a 5% increased lucky hit chance. And then every 100 energy you spend grants you 5% increased lucky hit chance for 5 seconds. So I'm guessing a lot of like the rogue stuff is dealing with that lucky hit. That's what we're seeing so far. So, I mean we're near the end. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Adrenaline Rush. While moving, you gain 5% increased energy regeneration. Then we got while at or above 50% maximum energy, gain 5% increased movement speed. While below 50% maximum energy, gain 5% increased attack speed. And then we got after moving 15 meters, your next attack deals times 7% increased damage. Alright, now for the Capstones, which is kind of gonna allow you to further specialize in what you're putting all your skills in. First one is Momentum. Cutthroat skills grant a stack of momentum for 8 seconds if they are either hit a stunned, dazed, frozen enemy, hit any enemy from behind. While at 3 stacks of momentum, you gain 20% increased damage reduction, 30% increased energy regeneration, and 15% increased movement speed. Alright. Then we got Close Quarter Combat. Damaging an enemy with Marksman or Cutthroat skills each grants a 10% increased attack speed bonus for 8 seconds. While both attack speed bonuses are active, you deal 20% increased damage against crowd-controlled enemies. Then we got Precision. Critical strikes with Marksman skills grant you Precision. You gain 4% increased critical strike damage per stack of Precision up to a maximum of 20%. When you reach the maximum Precision, your next Marksman skill is a guaranteed critical strike that deals times 40% increased critical strike damage, then consumes all stacks of Precision. Then we got Victimize. It's a lucky hit thing, so we're going to go dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has up to a 30% chance to cause an explosion, dealing 23% of the original damage to them and surrounding enemies. Then we got Exposure. It's a lucky hit as well. Dealing direct damage to an enemy affected by a trap skill has up to 25% increased chance to reduce the active cooldown of your trap skills by 20%. Drop a cluster of exploding stun grenades that deal 40% total physical damage and stun enemies for 0.5 seconds. Alright you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Sorry if it seemed a little fast. I was trying to kind of go through it. My dogs like to bark a lot, so sometimes it's really hard to record videos because he barks at everything that walks out there. So sorry if it seems a little rushed because of that. Thank you guys so much for watching these videos. If you guys like this kind of content where I kind of say everything, or if you guys would like to see in the future of me actually making builds, I know I didn't get a lot of recording done in the beta. That's because I work on the weekends, and the beta was only on the weekend. Surprise, surprise. But anyway, if you guys like this kind of content, please like and subscribe down below. It means a lot to me. Leave a comment on what you would like to see come out of the Rogue. Whether you want to be up close or a trap build, or just tell me what you guys did in the beta. You know, I would love to hear what worked out for you guys. It means a lot to me. Thank you guys so much, and see you next time.